Imagine you're looking at a complex image, a swirl of colors and shapes. At first it might seem chaotic, almost overwhelming. Your eyes dart from one part of the image to another, trying to make sense of it all. You might feel a bit lost, unsure of what you're seeing. Then it all clicks into place. You see the picture. The chaos transforms into a coherent whole, and suddenly everything makes sense. This is the essence of Gestalt psychology, understanding how we perceive the world as organized patterns and structures, rather than just a collection of individual elements. Today, we'll dive deep into Gestalt psychology, how it emerged, its fundamental principles, and how it influences everything from perception to problem solving. Gestalt psychology began in the early 20th century with three key figures: Max Wertheimer, Kurt Koffka, and Wolfgang Kohler. These German psychologists sought to understand how we perceive the world around us. They were reacting against the elemental approach of traditional psychology, which focused on breaking down mental processes into individual components. While traditional psychology, like structuralism and behaviorism, tried to study the mind in smaller, isolated parts, the Gestalt psychologists believed that the mind works in wholes, and that these wholes cannot be understood by simply adding up individual pieces. In 1912, Max Wertheimer published a study on apparent motion, which was the first significant contribution to Gestalt psychology. His work focused on how we perceive motion in still images, something you've likely experienced with motion pictures. When you watch a movie, you see a continuous stream of still images, yet your mind interprets them as smooth, flowing motion. Wertheimer showed that perception is more than just a passive recording of stimuli. It's an active process of organizing and interpreting sensory data. This principle of apparent motion became the foundation for what would later be known as Gestalt psychology. The core idea: we perceive the world in organized, unified wholes, not as disconnected elements. Gestalt psychology is built upon several key principles that explain how our brains organize and make sense of the world. Let's break down the most important ones. First, we have the principle of proximity. This principle suggests that objects that are close together in space are perceived as a group. For example, if you see a set of dots scattered around a page, you will naturally group the dots that are near each other, even if they weren't intentionally placed together. This principle works because our brains like to simplify the world by organizing things into patterns and groups. When things are close together, we assume they belong together. Next up, the principle of similarity. This principle states that objects that share similar characteristics, like shape, color, or size, are perceived as part of the same group. For instance, if you see several circles and squares mixed together, your mind will group the similar shapes, circles with circles, squares with squares. Our minds tend to group things that resemble each other, helping us make sense of complex stimuli. Another important principle is the principle of continuity. This suggests that our brains prefer to see continuous lines and patterns rather than abrupt, disconnected ones. For instance, if you see two intersecting lines, you might perceive them as two smooth, continuous curves instead of two disjointed lines. Our minds like fluidity. Then we have the principle of closure. This principle suggests that when we see incomplete shapes or figures, our minds automatically fill in the missing information. For example, if you see a circle made of dashed lines, your mind will close the gaps and perceive the circle as complete. We're wired to create closure, even when the information isn't fully there. This ability to fill in the gaps helps us make sense of the world quickly and efficiently. The figure-ground relationship explains how we distinguish objects from their background. For instance, when you look at a picture, You'll focus on the main object or figure, while the background fades into the background. However, in some cases, like the vase and faces illusion, what's considered figure or ground can shift depending on how we look at it. This principle highlights the way our brains constantly interpret and reinterpret the visual field, often shifting focus between different aspects of the same image. Gestalt psychology isn't just a theoretical framework. It has practical applications across many aspects of life. Designers use Gestalt principles every day to create intuitive, user-friendly interfaces. By understanding how people naturally group things based on proximity or similarity, designers can organize content in a way that feels natural and effortless. For example, when elements are grouped together on a web page, users instinctively understand that they're related, thanks to principles like proximity and similarity. Gestalt psychology also has a significant impact on problem solving. The Gestalt psychologists were particularly interested in the idea of insight learning, that aha moment when a solution to a problem suddenly becomes clear. This typically happens when we reframe the problem and see the whole situation from a new perspective. Gestalt psychology shows us that problem solving isn't just about logically breaking things down, it's about seeing the big picture and making sudden insights. Gestalt therapy based on these principles helps individuals focus on the here and now, encouraging them to experience and explore their thoughts and feelings in the present moment. The goal is to help people see their emotional lives as unified wholes, rather than getting stuck in past experiences or fragmented thoughts. While Gestalt psychology has been influential, it has also faced some criticisms. Some argue that it is too holistic, ignoring the importance of breaking things down into smaller, more specific parts. Others suggest that its principles are difficult to scientifically test or measure. Despite these criticisms, Gestalt psychology has made lasting contributions to fields like cognitive psychology, education, and even art. The principles of Gestalt continue to inform how we understand perception and problem solving today. At its core, Gestalt psychology reminds us that the way we perceive the world is not just about piecing together individual details. It's about how our minds organize those details into meaningful wholes. From art to design, from therapy to problem solving, Gestalt principles shape our understanding of the world around us. Gestalt psychology gives us a unique lens through which to view the human experience, helping us understand that our perception is not just a passive process, but an active effort to make sense of the world in ways that are often greater than the sum of its parts. Please like and subscribe for more informative videos.